Hello everyone, my name is Mohammad Azam, and in this video I'm going to show you that how you can fetch data from an API and then insert it into SQLite using SwiftData, but only insert it into SwiftData if the data has actually changed. So we're not really going to insert the data again and again. We're only going to insert the data if it has changed. But now the question is, well, how do we know if the data has changed on the server? And there are many different ways that you can find out if the data on the server has changed. And one of the things that you can use, which is very common, is the ETag. And you can go to many different articles. This is the one on developer.mozilla.org. And over here, they talk about the ETag, which is simply the hash of the body that you're about to send. So anytime the body is going to change, the ETag is going to change. All right. Now, if your client, meaning your browser or your iPhone or Android app, is requesting from a resource and it has not changed, then it's going to return you a 304 telling it that the request has not really changed, so I'm not really going to send you anything back. And you can read all of these articles, but we are going to implement this in our application, in our client, which is basically our SwiftUI app. Okay. Now, what about the server? I mean, we were using a different server before. We were using a JSON placeholder with some dummy post, but in this particular context, I am just running my own local server. And you can see this is a server. It's nothing. It's literally just one URL or one endpoint, which is called /post. And it is using Express.js. So we are using Express, but you can create this server in Vapor. You can create the server any way you like. Now, let me go ahead and go to this URL and actually show it to you what it returns. It's nothing fancy. So if you simply go to localhost 8080/post, localhost means it's running on my machine, you can see that it's returning you some hard-coded list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different posts. All right. Okay, so this is the server we're going to be using. And the good thing about when we're using Express to build this server is that Express is already sending our ETag back. And you can always check this out. If I go back over here into my VS Code, because that's where my server is written, I can, you can use any network client. I have added this Thunder client as an extension. You can simply go to extension and search for it. So if I go over here and make this particular request, you can see this is actually now Thunder client. So I'm making a request over here. And let's see what it returns. You can see that it actually returns me ETag. So I don't really have to do anything on the server side. Since I'm using Express, it already returns you the ETag. And if on the client side, if I copy this ETag and I send the same ETag with the key if none match, and the value is the same exact ETag, now you can see that the response header is actually telling you 304 not modified. So if the client is sending you the ETag, which is exactly the same as the one on the server, then the server is simply going to say, hey, not modified. I'm going to send you this particular header with status response code not modified, and response, we're really not going to do anything. We're not really going to get anything, any response, as you can see. All right, now if I change this ETag, if I mess around with it, now you can see that we get something back. All right, so this ETag, the one that we are sending from the client, it has to match on the server. And if it does match on the server, then it means that the server and the it's not really changed. It's the same thing, same data. So your server is not really going to send the data back. It's just going to tell you that it's going to be not modified. Okay. So how do we do this in our application, right? I mean, that's where we have to do all the stuff in our app. So what should we do? Well, we'll start with the post loader, okay? And there are unlimited number of ways of implementing this. I'm just going to implement it in a very simple, nice way, meaning a very straightforward way. I'm not really going to create any generic post loader or anything like that. So the load post is going to return you an array of posts, and it's apart from returning an array of posts, what we can do is also return over here the HTTP URL response. So it's going to return basically a tuple. All right. Okay. Now the process that we have to do over here is, first of all, get the ETag. Whenever the server sends us the ETag, we need to save it somewhere so that we can add it or send it back to the server in the next request, in the future request. So we're going to say get access to ETag or get ETag from user defaults. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and get the defaults equals to user defaults. And the first time we are going to make a request to get all the posts, the user defaults will not really have anything because this is our first request. We're going to get the ETag defaults dot string for value. And you can obviously use any key that you want. I'm just going to use a key called ETag, but you can use anything. And next up, we're going to create headers. Again, this is up to you, whatever type of headers that you are trying to add. By default, I'm just going to add content type application JSON because the request will be JSON and our expectation will also be JSON. All right. Over here, we can say if ETag is available, then add it to the headers. So if ETag, if let ETag, we're going to go ahead and unwrap it if it's available. Then we can say headers. And the header that we're going to use over here will be called if none match, because this is a header that the server is going to read and decide that, oh, the ETag is exactly the same. So I'm going to decide 304, meaning no change has been made. All right. So let's go ahead and use that same exact header. Make sure you spell it correctly, if none match. And we're going to assign the ETag over here, only if it's not null. Next up, we'll create our request. Here we go. Easy. We also need to make sure that our request is not getting the data from the cache. So we are going to go ahead and change the cache policy. And we're going to say reload ignoring local cache data. So local cache meaning the cache of the actual, wherever it's caching, the URL cache is caching, just ignore that stuff. And let's go ahead and say request.all HTTP header fields equals to headers, because we need to attach the headers. After that, we have to make the same thing, meaning the URL session request. We're going to make the session request. We're going to get the response. Okay, so let's get the response. There we go. If response is a problem, then we're going to go ahead and say invalid response. Next, we're going to go ahead and decode. So let's go ahead and decode. And now we have the post and we have the HTTP response. So why not just send it back as a tuple? So post and HTTP response, because that's what we are trying to return. Let's go ahead and build it. And there you have it. So this is a function, load post, that is going to get access to read the ETag from the user defaults. If there is an ETag, we're going to go ahead and attach the ETag to the header and perform the request. Now, who is going to be calling that? It will be the data importer. So inside the data importer, we're going to go ahead and say post and response, or let's call it HTTP response. And we'll say try await post loader dot load post. And now we can perform a switch on HTTP response dot status code. If it is 200, now the 200 from the load post, 200 means that you got some data. It's actually sending you something. It's not 304, remember? 304 will be if I take the same exact E tag. Let me go ahead and copy this since we have messed around with this one. Oops. Let's go ahead and add the same one over here. You can see 304 not modified, right? So 204 or 200 will be, it has been modified. So the first thing I'm going to do is delete all existing data. Now, when you say delete all existing data, you might be like, oh no, we're deleting all the user's data, right? Well, we're not performing this for user stuff mainly. I would say that we are trying to perform this for catalogs. Like maybe you have a list of vegetables, like maybe you have like list of 10 vegetables when you started your application. But now you keep on adding new vegetables. So if a person make a request to get the vegetables, but you haven't really, added any new vegetable, then they shouldn't really be getting the data and putting it in the database or doing anything like that. But if you have added something to the catalog, then we can say that, oh yeah, we can remove everything from the catalog, not the things that are for that particular user, but for the catalog where they can access it. All right. And we can go ahead and delete it. So I'm going to say context dot delete. Now we don't really have access to the context over here. Actually, we do. Sorry. Here we go. And we're going to go ahead and say model post model dot self. So we're deleting everything regarding the post. And this is not user data. This is just some catalog stuff data or catalog data. And for default, we're going to just go ahead and say break. So after deleting it, we're going to use the same exact code that we have written previously also. I'll just paste it over here. We can go through it a little bit. Basically, it's saying that if the post is not empty, then we're going to go over and insert all these posts. And let's go and build it. And I think now it's time to run it. But let me go ahead and run this simulator. Probably we should move this simulator somewhere we can see easily. Delete this particular app. Okay, and let's run it. Okay, so total count is 5. Okay, and we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that's good. If I run it again, you'll see that it's still 5. There we go. And if I go over here to the post loader, whenever we get a response, we can go ahead and display this. So I'll say print HTTP response status code. So let's go ahead and print out the status code so that you see it's 304. Well, status code is coming out to be 200. That's interesting. So what exactly happened? What did we mess up? Well, one thing that I'm looking at over here is you can see that we're getting this E tag from the defaults, right? But when did it actually get to that? Who inserted it into the defaults? And the answer is, I don't see anybody writing anything to the defaults. You see what I'm saying? Like when we get the HTTP status code, we get all of these different things, but we never wrote anything to the default. So nobody is, writing stuff to the defaults. So this is going to be interesting because status code will always be different in this case. So let's go ahead and say over here, write ETag to user defaults. We already have the defaults. Well, what about the code itself? Can we say HTTP response dot value for header field? Okay, we will say value for header field, which is ETag, and we can get access to the ETag over here. server ETag. Okay. Now, if we don't really get this, then we can go ahead and throw an exception over here also, because the server is supposed to be sending ETags. If it's not sending ETags, there's something else wrong. So I can say network error dot missing headers. Maybe there's missing headers, or you can even use a different error. And now we can say default, or defaults, I think, defaults dot set value. So what the values are we setting? The value will be server tag for the key ETag. Let's go ahead and build it. So this means that if we get the HTTP, whatever the response that we are getting, we get the ETag and then we set that particular ETag over here. If we go over here in the data importer, we can see that what we're doing over here, all of this stuff, meaning whenever it is 200, we delete it, we insert it. Okay, let's go ahead and run this again. Okay, so total is 5. That is fine. I think it would be nice if we can print out the actual HTTP status code. So I can go ahead and print it out over here. Print HTTP response.status code. Ooh, now it actually kind of fails, right? And it is failing that it is not a correct format, which is kind of weird because it is now saying completely different. The given data is not a JSON format. All right, and why is that? Right, because the body didn't really send anything back. And you can see over here, we are returning 304, and whenever you're returning 304, this means that you cannot really decode it to anything. All right, and it is failing because we are also using the forced unwrapping over here. So that's another issue that we have to deal with. So one of the ways that we can solve this particular problem is checking the status code. So if HTTP response.status code is equals to 304, then we know that there is no real body. So we can actually return something over here. We can return nothing, no post, and HTTP response. Okay, so that should hopefully be okay. Let's go ahead and build our application now. And let's go ahead and run this application to see what exactly is going on. Okay, so we are printing this out. I guess it's returning you nothing over here because it is 304. So right now it's not really crashing. That's fine. And also what I want to do is, again, print out this HTTP response code so that we have a little bit of idea of if it's not modified or if it's okay. Okay, so 304 not modified. We can actually see it's the same 5 items. What if I go over here and actually modify the response? So how do I modify the response? Well, you can just do anything you want. So let me go ahead and change the title to Introduction to Swift Language. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing over here. I'm just changing it. And I'm going to go ahead and run it again. Now we get 200 and Introduction to Swift Language. All right, great. I think we are printing it 2 times, by the way, this and this. So let's go ahead and remove one of them. Okay, so now it was 200, but now we haven't really modified it. So it's 304 again, not modified. Okay, let's go back again, modify something. So over here I can say hello SwiftData, save it, and you can change anything you want. I'm just changing the title, and let's go and run this. It's going to be 200. 200, there we go. And you can see the title has been changed. If I just make the same exact request again without changing anything and without the server changing anything, then it's going to be 304. All right, and it is 304 because nothing really changed on the server. It's the same thing. It's the same ETag being sent from the client to the server, and then the server checks the ETag to make sure that it's a saved one, and it returns you the same thing. And obviously you can go ahead and copy paste this again, and you'll see that it is going to be modified. So this is how you can utilize the ETag to make sure that your client is not downloading the data again and again. It is only downloading the data when it is actually changed on the server. And this is obviously a very simplistic example. I mean, we wrote all this code over here in load post, but I think in your actual application, you may end up creating more of a generic layer where you are checking all of these different things. And then the data importer is, making use of the post loader and then inserting all the data. So that's it. So hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. Definitely check out that how you can use ETag as I have shown you, and it can definitely dramatically increase performance for your application because you're not really requesting and the server is not really responding with the same exact resource even though the client contains the same exact content or the resource. So those resources are not sent again and again unless those resources have been changed, which is very important when you're doing any kind of communication with the server. Less is more, just making sure that they're updated, not stale data, and whenever it changes, then you can, the server can tell that, hey, ETag has changed. So yeah, here's some new stuff. Hope you have really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Now, one of the things that I will encourage you to is to check out my website, which is azamsharp.school. And on azamsharp.school, you can see there are tons and tons of courses. I mean, you have recording for Introduction to Reality Kit, workshop, MVVM in SwiftUI. I mean, just look at these courses. I mean, this is just insane amount of courses. All right, so it's 22 courses, 130 plus hours of content. And I'm also doing workshops. So if you ever want to check out some workshops, I'll be doing the Introduction to Server-Side Swift using Vapor workshop, and I'm also doing Introduction to Testing workshops. So both will be some amazing workshops, and the best way would be to become a member. Now you can go ahead and buy these individual courses, that's perfectly fine, but when you become a member, you get access to 22 comprehensive courses, 130 hours of videos, plus more because I'm always making some new courses. You also get 30% off the live workshops. So that's a really good deal because I'm doing these workshops all the time now. So definitely check out azamsharp.school. Please share it with your colleagues, share it with your friends, tweet about it, and hopefully you will enjoy all of these different courses that I have worked on. So thank you so much.